What kind of person calls the cops on an old man's barn over a few rusty tools? The kind who thrives on control, who sees a weed in a neighbor's yard as a personal affront. Karen Hofstede, president of the Willow Creek HOA, was that person. Her suburban kingdom, a manicured grid of identical lawns and beige siding, bowed to her every whim. But the old McAllister place, with its sagging barn and wildflower-dotted field, was a stubborn thorn in her side. Grandpa McAllister, a wiry man in his late 70s with a face like weathered oak, didn't care for her rules. His property, just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, was a relic of a freer time, and Karen hated it. She'd watched him tinker in that barn for years. Her lips pursed, her phone always ready to dial. One humid August evening, she finally did. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in bruised purples, when two police cruisers rolled up the gravel drive to Grandpa's farm. Karen stood at the edge of her pristine lawn, arms crossed, her floral dress stretched tight over her frame. She'd called in a suspicious activity tip, claiming the barn was a hazard, possibly hiding illegal equipment. The officers, young and uneasy, stepped out, their boots crunching on the dirt. Grandpa emerged from the barn, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, his overalls stained but his posture straight as a flagpole. His granddaughter, Ellie, a fiery 20-something with a law degree and a temper, was right behind him. "What's this about?" Grandpa asked, his voice low, steady, like he'd faced worse than this. Karen, from her perch across the property line, shouted, "That barn's a danger. It's full of junk. Probably a fire trap." The officers exchanged glances, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. Ellie stepped forward, her hands balled into fists. "You've got no right to be here. Karen, this isn't your land." Karen's eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with venom. "I'm protecting this community. You think you're above the law." The air crackled with tension, the kind that makes your chest tight. Grandpa raised a hand, silencing Ellie. "Let's hear them out," he said, his gaze locking onto the officers. They stammered through their purpose routine inspection. They said, "Based on a complaint." Karen smirked, certain she'd won. But something in Grandpa's calm demeanor unsettled her, like a storm brewing just out of sight. The officers asked to see inside the barn. Grandpa nodded, leading them to the heavy wooden doors. Ellie followed, shooting Karen a glare that could melt steel. Inside, the barn was a maze of organized chaos, shelves of tools, stacks of lumber, and a half-restored tractor gleaming under a tarp. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. The officers, visibly relieved, started to wrap up. But Karen wasn't done. She stormed closer, her voice rising. "You're not looking hard enough. He's hiding something. I know it." Ellie spun around, her patience gone. "You're obsessed. Karen, you've been harassing him for years." The officers tried to de-escalate, but Karen's accusations grew wilder, her finger jabbing at Grandpa. "He's probably running a chop shop, or worse." Then came the twist no one saw coming. One of the officers, a rookie named Torres, noticed a framed photograph on a workbench. It was old, faded, showing a younger Grandpa in a crisp military uniform, rows of medals pinned to his chest. Torres, whose father was a veteran, paused. "Sir, were you in the service?" he asked, almost reverently. Grandpa nodded, his voice quiet. "Long time ago." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, Please. He's just some old farmer. But Torres wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, squinting at the insignia. That's a lieutenant general's star, he said, his voice tinged with awe. The other officer froze, suddenly aware they were standing in the presence of someone far bigger than this small-town dispute. Karen's smirk faltered, but she doubled down. So what? Doesn't mean he's above the law. The mood shifted like a fault line cracking. Ellie's eyes lit up, sensing an opening. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old family photos, and showed the officers one of Grandpa at a Pentagon ceremony, shaking hands with a former president. Karen's face drained of color, but she refused to back off. This doesn't change anything. That barn's still a violation. She snapped, her voice shrill now. The officers, now fully aware of Grandpa's stature, were done playing along. Ma'am, Torres said, we've seen enough. There's nothing here. But Karen wouldn't let it go. She marched toward the barn, demanding to inspect it herself. Ellie blocked her path, and for a moment, it looked like fists might fly. Grandpa's voice cut through the chaos, calm but commanding. Karen, you've made your point. Now leave. The standoff was electric. Every word a spark. Karen, red-faced and trembling, pointed at Grandpa. This isn't over. I'll have this place condemned. The officers, now firmly on Grandpa's side, escorted her back to her property line, warning her about false reports. Ellie watched, her heart pounding with pride and anger. Grandpa, unruffled, went back to his tractor, as if the whole ordeal was just a minor inconvenience. But the truth was out. This wasn't just some old farmer. Lieutenant General James McAllister had led battalions, advised generals, and stared down enemies far scarier than a suburban busybody. Karen had picked the wrong fight. The next morning, Willow Creek buzzed with whispers. Word of Karen's humiliation spread like wildfire, fueled by Ellie's social media post about the incident. Neighbors, long tired of Karen's tyranny, started sharing their own stories of her petty vendettas. But Karen wasn't one to retreat. She doubled down, filing complaints with the county, claiming Grandpa's barn violated zoning laws. She rallied a few loyal HOA members, waving rulebooks and citing obscure regulations. Ellie, meanwhile, wasn't about to let her grandfather be bullied. She dug into public records, uncovering that Karen's own backyard shed her pride and joy was built without a permit. The hypocrisy was staggering, and Ellie was ready to use it. The confrontation came at the next HOA meeting, held in the community center's stuffy conference room. Karen stood at the podium, her voice sharp as she presented her case against Grandpa's barn. It's an eyesore, a safety hazard, and a threat to property values, she declared, her allies nodding like obedient puppets. Ellie, sitting in the back, waited for her moment. When Karen finished, Ellie stood, her voice steady but laced with fire. If we're talking violations, let's discuss your shed. Karen. No permit. No inspection. Should we call the county to tear it down? The room gasped, heads swiveling to Karen, whose face turned blotchy red. She stammered, trying to deflect. But Ellie pressed on, holding up documents she'd printed from the county office. You've been breaking your own rules for years. The room erupted. Neighbors, emboldened by Ellie's stand, began airing their grievances. Karen's reign of petty fines and nosy inspections was unraveling. She tried to regain control, banging the gavel, but the crowd was done listening. One man shouted about a $200 fine for a basketball hoop. Another complained about Karen snooping in his garage. Grandpa, who'd reluctantly attended, sat quietly, his presence a silent anchor. When he finally spoke, his words were measured but devastating. I've fought for this country, lost friends, and built a life here. I don't need your permission to live on my own land. The room fell silent. Every eye on him. Karen, cornered, lashed out. You think you're untouchable because of some old medals. But her words fell flat, her authority crumbling like dry leaves. The final blow came a week later. The county, tipped off by Ellie's research, inspected Karen's shed and issued a demolition order. Her own rules had turned against her. The HOA board, smelling blood, voted her out as president, replacing her with a soft-spoken retiree who promised fairness. Karen's fall was swift and public, her name now a cautionary tale in Willow Creek. She retreated to her house, blinds drawn, her once feared voice silenced. Grandpa's barn stood untouched, its doors still swinging open for his quiet projects. Ellie, inspired by her grandfather's resilience, started a community group to protect rural properties from overzealous regulations, turning her anger into action. As autumn settled over Willow Creek, Grandpa sat on his porch, watching the leaves fall. Ellie joined him, a mug of coffee in her hands. You didn't need me to fight your battles, she said, half smiling. Grandpa chuckled, his eyes crinkling. Maybe not, but I'm glad you did. He looked out at the barn, its silhouette steady against the fading light. Folks like her, they think powers and rules. Real strength is in knowing who you are. Ellie nodded, her heart full. The barn, the land, the Manthe were unshakable, a testament to a life built on principle, not control. The neighborhood was quieter now, freer, as if Karen's fall had lifted a weight no one realized they'd been carrying. Grandpa went back to his tractor, Ellie to her advocacy, and Willow Creek to a new chapter, one where respect outranked petty power plays. End.